before this day is done, we shall be faced with an unthinkable decision.
Let's talk about Rick Jones for a minute, because this guy has been around forever in Marvel Comics, and he's got one of the most complicated histories in the whole universe. This dude has been a sidekick to practically every major hero you can think of: the Hulk, Captain America, Mar-Vell, Rom the Space Knight, and even Genus Vell. It's like he's the ultimate supporting character who just can't stay out of trouble. And because he's been involved in so many huge storylines, like the Kree-Skrull War and the Destiny War, he's seen it all. But here's the thing that makes him really interesting. He's not just some ordinary guy who hangs around superheroes. He's actually gotten superpowers on a bunch of different occasions. Back in 1986, he briefly turned into a version of the Hulk himself, which is wild to think about. And later on he became A-Bomb, which is this blue gamma mutate that looks like a blue version of the Abomination after the intelligentsia experimented on him. So even though he started out as a regular human, he's been through so many transformations that it's hard to keep track. But then, after all that, he ended up losing his powers when Doc Green, who's basically another version of Bruce Banner, removed them. So he became a hacktivist instead, which is a pretty big shift from being a gamma-powered monster. It's kinda crazy how his life has gone in so many different directions, but that's just how it is in the comics. Rick Jones has been adapted into other media too, like the animated series The Incredible Hulk in 1996, where Luke Perry voiced him. And then Seth Green voiced him as A-Bomb in Hulk and the Agents of S.M.A.S.H., where he was part of that team. So even though he's not as famous as some of the bigger heroes, he's definitely left his mark on the Marvel Universe. Now, speaking of Hulks and all their different colors, Marvel just dropped a first look at this new Blue Hulk, and it's got everyone talking. The Hulk has had a bunch of different color schemes over the years. Like originally, he was actually gray, not green, which a lot of people don't realize. And then, in the 2000s, they introduced the Red Hulk, who turned out to be General Thunderbolt Ross. That was a huge reveal because Ross had always been one of Banner's biggest enemies, so seeing him become a Hulk himself was a really cool twist. And the Red Hulk ended up being super popular with fans, so much so that he even made it into the MCU in Captain America: Brave New World. So it makes sense that Marvel would want to try something similar with a Blue Hulk. But here's the thing, we don't really know who this Blue Hulk is yet. Marvel's keeping it under wraps, just like they did with the Red Hulk back in the day. In the preview for Avengers Armageddon, which is the big event that's coming up, we see this Blue Hulk standing in the middle of a city that's on fire, and even Iron Man looks totally overwhelmed by what's happening. So, whoever this Blue Hulk is, they're clearly a huge threat. And it looks like they're part of General Ross's army, which means they're probably fighting against the heroes. That's a pretty big deal, because Ross has just taken control of Latveria after the One World Under Doom event, so he's got a lot of power right now. So who could the Blue Hulk be? That's the big question. If you look at the history of gamma mutates in the comics, almost everyone close to Bruce Banner has been exposed to gamma radiation at some point. Even Betsy Ross, who's Thunderbolt's daughter, has been turned into a monster before. And then there's Rick Jones, who we just talked about, and he's been A-Bomb, which is a blue gamma mutate. So it's totally possible that the Blue Hulk is someone Banner knows and cares about, which would make the whole thing even more personal and tragic. But of course, it could also be a completely new character that Marvel created just for this event. They've done that before, so it wouldn't be surprising. But even though we don't know who the Blue Hulk is, their debut is still a really big deal for the Hulk mythos. Whenever Marvel introduces a new color of Hulk, it tends to shake things up in a major way. When the Hulk went back to being gray in the mid-1980s, people were upset at first, but it ended up revitalizing the character and making him more interesting. And the Red Hulk did the same thing later on, especially after the Planet Hulk and World War Hulk stories, which were huge events in their own right. So the Blue Hulk is probably going to have a similar impact, especially since they're debuting in Avengers Armageddon, which is supposed to be this massive story that changes the whole Marvel Universe. But let's shift gears a little bit and think about how all of this could connect to the MCU, because there's been a lot of rumors floating around about what's coming next after Secret Wars. The MCU is going through this big transition phase right now, and everyone's wondering what the new status quo is going to look like. And with the X-Men finally being introduced into the MCU, there's a lot of potential for some really cool crossovers and storylines. So, how could they adapt the Blue Hulk into that? Well, one possibility is that they could use the Blue Hulk as a way to introduce the concept of gamma mutates on a larger scale. So far, the MCU has mostly focused on Bruce Banner and the Hulk, with a few nods to other characters like She-Hulk and Abomination. But there's so much more to explore, and the Blue Hulk could be a great way to expand that corner of the universe. And then with the X-Men entering the picture, there's a chance that the Blue Hulk could end up being a mutant or connected to the mutant gene in some way. That would be a really interesting twist, because it would tie together two of Marvel's biggest franchises. Plus, it could set up some epic battles between the Hulk and the X-Men, which is something fans have been wanting to see for decades. But of course, it's all speculation at this point, because Marvel hasn't revealed any concrete plans yet. Still, the rumors are definitely floating around, and it's fun to think about all the possibilities. Another thing to consider is how the Blue Hulk could fit into the aftermath of Secret Wars. That event is supposed to reset the entire Marvel Universe, and after it's over, we could see a completely new landscape. That would be the perfect time to introduce a character like the Blue Hulk, because everything is going to be fresh and new. So maybe the Blue Hulk will be part of the new status quo that emerges after Secret Wars, and they'll end up being a major player in the next phase of the MCU. It's definitely something to keep an eye on, especially since Marvel has been doing such a great job of building up their big events lately. And of course, there's the possibility that the Blue Hulk could be connected to Rick Jones in some way. As I mentioned earlier, Rick has already been a blue gamma mutate in the comics, so it wouldn't be a stretch to think that they could adapt that storyline for the MCU. Maybe Rick Jones will be introduced in one of the upcoming movies, and he'll end up becoming the Blue Hulk as part of some experiment gone wrong. That would be a cool way to bring in a lesser-known character and give them a major role in the story. Plus, it would add a lot of emotional weight, because Rick has always been a close friend to Bruce Banner, so seeing him become a monster would be really tragic. But even if the Blue Hulk turns out to be someone else entirely, it's still exciting to think about the possibilities. Marvel has been doing such a great job of expanding their universe and introducing new characters, so the Blue Hulk could be a really fun addition. Whether they end up being a hero, a villain, or something in between, there's a lot of potential for some great stories. And with the X-Men saga on the horizon, the timing couldn't be better. Because, let's face it, the more characters and storylines they can bring together, the more epic the whole thing is going to be. And that's that for today's video, folks. Thank you so much for watching, and we will see you in our next one.